Hey guys, tonight we are venturing deep into the Yucatan Peninsula, a place where ancient secrets are swallowed by a relentless living jungle. Imagine stepping off a dusty bus and into a wall of heat so thick you can practically chew it. The air, heavy with the scent of damp earth and sweet, decaying flowers, is buzzing with the sound of a million unseen insects and the distant throaty roars of howler monkeys that sound uncannily like dinosaurs. This is the Maya forest, the second largest tropical rainforest in the Americas, and it does not play around. Let's be honest, dropped in here with just your wits, you'd probably last about as long as a forgotten avocado in the back of the fridge. The jungle was both a resource and a constant threat to the people who called it home. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always cool to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the sweat begin to prickle your skin instantly? Every surface is slick with moisture. You follow your guide, who occasionally points out things that could either kill you or save you, with very little in between. He shows you the cahoon palm, whose nuts, when lit, produce an oily smoke that wards off the worst of the mosquitoes. It's a trick the locals have used for centuries, a small piece of ancient wisdom still alive today. The ground beneath your feet is a strange combination of tangled roots and broken porous rock. This whole peninsula is a massive limestone shelf, the fossilized remains of an ancient coral reef. This stone was the single most important resource for the Maya. It was their building block for everything from majestic temples to the lime they used to process their corn, which unlocked crucial nutrients and allowed their civilization to flourish. You trudge onward, the path narrowing. The guide gestures with his machete toward a patch of jungle that looks identical to all the others. Historians still argue whether the Maya chose their city locations for defensive purposes, for proximity to water, or for purely spiritual reasons. Maybe it was a mix of all three, a complex calculation of survival and faith. You push past a final curtain of thick, waxy leaves, their undersides cool against your arm, and then you stop. There, in a clearing, punching a hole in the sky, is a pyramid. It's not the smooth, golden triangle of Egypt, but something wilder, grittier. It's a mountain of gray, weathered limestone blocks, built in giant, tiered steps that climb toward the heavens. Moss and vines cling to its sides, a testament to the jungle's patient effort to reclaim everything. For a moment, it doesn't seem real. It's a colossal, geometric ghost haunting the green inferno. The sheer scale of it is humbling, almost oppressive. You can't yet see the intricate carvings or the temple at its peak, only its immense, powerful silhouette. This was a structure built not just as a building, but as a statement, a stairway designed to bridge the mortal world and the realm of the gods. And as you stand at its base, craning your neck to see the top, you can't help but feel incredibly, incredibly small. You're still standing there, absorbing the sheer presence of the thing, when you start to notice the details of its design. This is no smooth-sided Egyptian pyramid built as a grand, sealed-off tomb. This is something else entirely. It's a series of massive, stacked platforms, creating a layered stairway to the sky effect. Each tier is a statement, a level of a much larger cosmic model. The Maya called these structures awits, which is their word for a mountain. In the mostly flat expanse of the Yucatan, real mountains were rare and sacred places, seen as the sources of life, water, and creation. So, if nature didn't provide one, they would build one. This pyramid is a man-made mountain of stone, a deliberate echo of a powerful natural form. The pyramid's core is a dense heart of rubble, faced with precisely cut limestone blocks. But what you see now, this weathered gray stone, is just a skeleton. In its heyday, This entire structure would have been covered in a thick layer of stucco and painted in vibrant colors, most often a striking reddish hue associated with sacrifice and royalty. Imagine this giant multi-tiered mountain not as a ruin, but as a brilliant, painted spectacle, gleaming under the tropical sun. It would have been visible for miles, a beacon of power and faith. This structure was designed as an axis mundi, a cosmic center where the three planes of Mayan existence intersected. The temple at the very top, small and exclusive, was the realm of the heavens, the place closest to the gods and accessible only to priests and the divine king. The base of the pyramid, the earthly platform you're standing on, represented the middle world, the realm of human beings. And deep within or beneath the pyramid, often aligned with a natural cave, was the symbolic entrance to Xibalba, the dark, watery underworld. This man-made mountain was therefore a direct line of communication, a conduit connecting the sky, the earth, and the underworld. Historians still argue about the primary function of these magnificent structures. While many later pyramids famously contained the tombs of powerful rulers, the debate continues whether they were conceived primarily as funerary monuments, or if their main purpose was as a ceremonial stage for priests, to perform rituals that maintained cosmic order. Was the burial a concluding honor for a king placed within an already sacred space, or was the entire mountain built from the ground up just to house his remains? The truth is likely a complex blend of both. As you look closer at the stone, you see just how much effort went into the now vanished stucco finish. To create the lime plaster, the Maya had to burn immense quantities of limestone, which in turn required burning vast tracts of jungle for fuel. It's a quirky and sobering thought. The very act of constructing and beautifying these sacred mountains may have contributed significantly to the deforestation and environmental stress that some scholars believe played a role in the eventual decline of their cities. They were building their connection to the gods using a method that was simultaneously consuming the earthly world around them. You run a hand over the rough, pockmarked surface, trying to imagine the brilliant red paint, the smooth finish, and the smell of burning limestone and copal incense that would have once saturated the air. Your guide leads you to the edge of a vast grassy plaza. At its center stands a pyramid so famous, its image is probably already burned into your brain. The Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. Even seeing it in person, it looks impossibly perfect, a masterclass in geometry and sheer willpower. Today, you're not just here to admire its form, you're here to see it perform. Twice a year, on the spring and autumn equinoxes, something incredible happens. And as you find a spot on the lawn, along with hundreds of other hushed onlookers, you feel the electric anticipation in the air. The sun is beginning its slow descent, and the show is about to start. The Maya were obsessive astronomers, and to them, astronomy was theology. The movements of the sun, moon, and Venus were the journeys of gods, and their celestial paths dictated everything from when to go to war to when to plant corn. This pyramid is a testament to that devotion, a giant functioning solar clock carved from stone. Its architecture is pure calendrical mathematics. There are 4 stairways, each with 91 steps. You do the math. 4 times 91 is 364. Add the final top platform as one last step, and you have a total of 365, one for each day of the solar year. It's a quirky, almost nerdy detail that reveals the staggering precision of its builders. They didn't just build a mountain, they built a calendar. As the afternoon light softens and turns golden, all eyes are fixed on the northern staircase. At the base of the stairway are 2 massive, carved stone serpent heads, their mounts agape. For most of the year, they are simply powerful sculptures. But today, they are waiting for their bodies to arrive. You watch the edge of the pyramid as the sun sinks lower. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, A series of triangular shadows cast by the step terraces begins to form along the side of the staircase. A ripple of murmurs goes through the crowd. The triangles connect one after another, creating a long, undulating line of shadow against the sunlit stone. It's a snake, a diamond-backed serpent of pure light and shadow, writhing its way down the side of the man-made mountain. This is the descent of the god Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, a deity of creation, wind, and rain, returning to earth. The shadow body inches its way down the pyramid over the course of a few hours, eventually connecting perfectly with the carved stone head at the bottom before fading away as the sun finally sets. It's a silent, majestic piece of architectural theater, a phenomenon so precise it feels like magic. Historians still argue whether this spectacular display was the primary design purpose from the outset or a brilliant, perhaps even accidental, fusion of structurally sound design and potent symbolism. Was the entire 79-foot pyramid engineered just for this twice-yearly light show? Or did the master builders simply realize that the angle of the tiers needed for stability would also produce this stunning effect at the right time of year? Given the Maya's deep astronomical knowledge and the perfect alignment, it seems unlikely to be a mere coincidence. Seeing it with your own eyes, you have no doubt. This was a message carved in stone and written in light to mark a sacred point in time, letting the people know their God was with them, and it was time for the seasons to turn. The last sliver of the sun disappears below the horizon, and with it, the ethereal serpent of light dissolves. The crowd begins to stir and disperse, their chatter breaking the spell. You, however, remain drawn to the now shadowed northern staircase where the god just made his descent. The air cools rapidly, and the stone of the pyramid seems to exhale the day's heat. Now that the spectacle is over, the structure returns to its fundamental purpose, a stairway. And what a stairway it is. From a distance, the steps look uniform, manageable. But as you stand at the base and look up, the illusion shatters. The staircase is incredibly steep, rising at an angle that seems to defy both gravity and common sense. Modern building codes would have a full-blown panic attack here. The steps themselves are shockingly narrow, barely wide enough for half of your foot to find purchase. There are no handrails, no safety ropes, nothing but you and a 100-foot ladder of unforgiving stone blocks. This wasn't built for a leisurely stroll. For much of modern history, tourists were allowed to make the climb. You can almost feel the phantom burn in your thighs just looking at it. The ascent was a grueling physical test. Each step is a conscious, deliberate effort. Your focus narrows to just the few blocks in front of you. You wouldn't be walking upright. The sheer pitch forces you into a crawl, placing your hands on the steps above to pull yourself up. It's a posture of supplication, of humility. You are physically forced to bow as you approach the heavens. This wasn't a design flaw. It was a core feature. The difficulty was the point. It was a filter, a physical ritual that transformed the person undertaking the journey. Historians still argue whether the general populace ever ascended these main ceremonial stairways, or if they were reserved exclusively for the god king and the highest echelons of the priesthood. Were the masses confined to the plaza below, watching their leaders perform sacred duties from a distance? Or did certain festivals allow for a more public procession up the sacred mountain? The answer likely varies from city to city and era to era, but the temple at the top was undoubtedly the most restricted space of all. As you imagine the climb, you realize it's not just about the physical strain, it's about the psychological shift. With each step upward, the noisy plaza below would recede, its sounds absorbed by the immense stone. The world of everyday life would shrink, replaced by an ever-expanding view of the jungle canopy stretching out to the horizon like a vast green ocean. You would be literally rising above the mortal plane. A quirky and slightly terrifying tidbit passed down by those who did climb it is that the descent was far worse. Going down forwards was virtually impossible, forcing you to crab walk backward, unable to see your footing, putting blind faith in the stone. The priests and the Ahau, the divine ruler, would make this journey dressed in elaborate costumes, weighed down by heavy jade ornaments and magnificent feathered headdresses. For them, it was a symbolic climb from the world of men to the portal of the gods, a journey they had to be worthy of completing. Standing here now, in the gathering twilight, you can feel the echoes of that effort. This was not a viewing platform. It was a spiritual crucible designed to test the body and humble the soul before one dared to approach the waiting gods. You wouldn't just be getting your steps in, you'd be proving your worthiness to the cosmos itself. Just as you're about to turn away from the Great Pyramid, your guide gestures for you to come closer, a faint knowing smile on his face. He taps a massive stone block at the base. "This that you see," he says in a low voice, "is not the real pyramid." You give him a quizzical look. Of course it's the real pyramid. It's about 100 feet tall and made of several thousand tons of very real-looking rock. He chuckles. "It's the last one," he clarifies, "but not the first." He explains that this colossal structure is like a geological onion, or perhaps more accurately, a set of Russian nesting dolls. Buried deep within its heart of rubble and stone is an earlier, smaller, and even more sacred pyramid. And inside that one, well, sometimes there's another one still. This is one of the most astonishing secrets of Mayan engineering. Instead of demolishing an old temple when it was time for an upgrade, perhaps to celebrate the end of a calendar cycle or the beginning of a new king's reign, they simply built over it. They would respectfully entomb the older structure, filling in the area around it and using it as the stable core for the next grander version. It was a renovation project on a truly epic scale. Why go to all that trouble? Why not just tear down the old one and start fresh? The answer is a complex mix of the practical and the profoundly spiritual. On a practical level, it was just easier. Demolishing and clearing a solid core pyramid without modern machinery would be a gargantuan task. Using the old one as a foundation was just smart engineering. But the deeper reason lies in the Mayan concept of sacredness. A place that was consecrated and had been the site of powerful rituals accumulated a spiritual energy, a life force called K. To abandon or destroy such a place would be a terrible sacrilege. Encasing it within a new, larger temple wasn't an act of concealment, but of preservation. It sealed in the sacred power, creating a layered battery of faith that grew with each new generation. Of course, historians still argue about the primary motivation. Was it always a pious act of preserving sacred energy, or was it sometimes a political power play? A new ruler could honor the gods and his city while simultaneously and very publicly overshadowing the works of his predecessor. The temple my father built was magnificent. You can almost hear him saying, "But my devotion and my pyramid is bigger." For decades, this layering was just a theory. But then, in the 1930s, archaeologists excavating this very pyramid, Kukulkan's temple, discovered a hidden entrance. They began to dig, carefully creating a tunnel not into dirt, but into the dense rubble heart of the pyramid itself. Imagine the thrill of that exploration, burrowing into a man-made mountain, unsure of what you might find. And then they broke through. They found themselves standing not in a tomb, but on the top step of a completely intact smaller pyramid. Its stucco walls were still covered in paint, preserved in the pitch-black, stable environment for centuries. It was a time capsule, a ghost temple sleeping within its larger shell. The air inside would have been perfectly still, holding the silence of nearly 1,000 years. The secret pyramid had its own steep staircase, its own temple on top, all perfectly preserved. It was a mind-boggling discovery that changed our understanding of what these structures really are. Not single monuments, but timelines built of stone. The discovery of the hidden temple leaves you with a strange feeling, a sense of peeking into a secret history. But the pyramid isn't the only structure defining this sacred space. Your guide leads you from its base into a long, open-ended corridor flanked by two massive, parallel stone walls, each 25 feet high. You've just stepped into the Great Ball Court of Chichen Itza, the largest in all of Mesoamerica. It's an immense, intimidating space, like a stadium for giants. The scale is all wrong for a human sport. It's 554 feet long and 300 feet wide. If you stood at one end, a person at the other would look like a tiny figurine. High up on each wall, halfway down the court, is a carved stone ring, or hoop, set vertically, not horizontally like a basketball hoop. The hole in the center seems impossibly small from down here. One of the nearby pyramids, the Temple of the Jaguars, has a special viewing box built into its structure, looking right down onto the court. It's easy to imagine the Ahau and his noble court, decked out in their finest jade and quetzal feathers, sitting there in the shade, observing the proceedings below. The pyramid wasn't just a temple. It was the ultimate grandstand, the divine skybox from which the gods and their earthly representatives would watch the game unfold. And what a game it was. This was the arena for pits, the sacred Maya ball game. This was no simple sport for weekend amusement. It was a complex ritual, a reenactment of the cosmic battles between gods and the eternal struggle between life and death. The players, strong and athletic, would try to score by hitting a solid rubber ball with their hips, thighs, and sometimes their upper arms, but never their hands or feet. The ball itself was a formidable object, weighing up to 8 or 9 pounds. It would have been like getting hit by a cannonball, and broken bones were probably a common feature of the game. The goal was to get that heavy ball through one of those high stone hoops. This was an incredibly rare feat, so rare that some accounts suggest if a player managed it, the game was immediately over, and he was declared the victor. But victory here could mean something very different from what we understand today. Carved panels along the base of the walls tell the story of the game's grim conclusion. They show players in their gear, and they show a decapitation. The game ended in sacrifice. This is where one of the most fascinating and enduring scholarly debates comes into play. Historians still argue whether it was the captain of the losing team who was sacrificed, a punishment for failure, or the captain of the winning team, an ultimate honor to be sent to the gods in a moment of supreme glory. There's compelling evidence for both sides. The idea of sacrificing your best athlete seems counterintuitive to us, but for the Maya, to be chosen as a perfect offering to the gods could have been the highest honor imaginable. The reliefs at Chichen Itza actually depict a kneeling, headless player with snakes of blood spurting from his neck, while another player stands holding his severed head. Frustratingly, it's not clear which one is the winner. As a quirky tidbit, this immense court has bizarre acoustics. A whisper at one end of the field can be heard with perfect clarity at the other, over 500 feet away. Imagine the tension, the silence between the thud of the ball against flesh and stone, where every grunt, every muttered prayer from the players could be heard by the king in his temple box. Standing here now, in the silent, empty court, you look from the impossibly high hoop back to the looming pyramid. It stood watch over it all, the triumphs, the brutality, and the sacred, bloody final act. Its stone face a silent witness to a game played for the highest of stakes. You pull your gaze away from the unnerving silence of the ball court and look back toward the pyramid that stood witness. Kukulkan's temple. You think about the nesting doll structure, the pyramid within the pyramid. The guide confirms what you're thinking. The story of that inner temple doesn't end with just finding it. The real treasure wasn't the building. It was what it held. You follow him back toward the Great Pyramid, but this time, you imagine taking a different path, not up the steep, sun-drenched staircase, but through the dark, cramped archaeologist's tunnel, burrowing deep into the pyramid's core. The journey inward is the opposite of the climb to the top. Instead of rising into the open air and expanding light, you are descending into absolute darkness and confinement. The air becomes heavy, still, and cool, stripped of any jungle scent. The only sound is the scuff of your own feet and the imagined, frantic heartbeat of the first explorers who pushed their way through this tight passage. After what feels like an eternity, the tunnel opens into a small, dark space. This is the antechamber of the hidden temple, a room sealed for nearly 1,000 years. As your eyes adjust to the torchlight, the first thing you see is a strange, unsettling figure. It's a stone statue of a man reclining on his back, with his knees bent and his head turned at a sharp 90-degree angle to stare directly at you. His hands are holding a flat bowl or plate over his stomach. This is a chacmol, a distinctive and enigmatic figure found throughout Mesoamerica. No one is entirely sure who or what it represents, but that bowl he holds is believed to have been a receptacle for offerings, flowers, tobacco, or perhaps something more grim, like the extracted hearts from sacrificial victims. It's a profoundly eerie welcome party for one, but the chacmol is just the guardian. The real discovery lies in the chamber just beyond it, the inner sanctuary. Stepping past the reclining statue, the explorers first entered this room and found the prize. There, in the center, waiting in the eternal darkness, was a throne. But it wasn't just a stone chair. It was a life-size jaguar, carved with fierce, majestic power. The entire sculpture was painted a brilliant, shocking vermilion red, a color made from cinnabar, a mercury ore that was both incredibly valuable and highly toxic. The jaguar's eyes are made of polished green jade, the most sacred of all stones to the Maya, symbolizing life, water, and royalty. Its spots are inlaid with more discs of shimmering jade, and its bared fangs are made from flint. Imagine the moment of discovery, the beam of a flashlight cutting through the ancient darkness, catching the gleam of those jade eyes for the first time in centuries. It wasn't a monster, it was a seat of power. This was the red jaguar throne, a throne for a king, but not a living one. It was placed here for the spirit of the entombed ruler, a place for him to preside over his new domain in the afterlife. Historians still argue about the throne's exact purpose in the pyramid's final days as an active temple. Was it purely a symbolic gift for the king's spirit to use in Xibalba? Or was it used in a live, final, and terrifying ceremony before the room was sealed and the new pyramid built around it? Could the king himself have sat upon this toxic, vibrant throne in a ritual to mark his own death and transfiguration into a god? We may never know, but deep inside the mountain of stone, the jaguar waited patiently, a fiery seat of power for a phantom king. You emerge from the imagined darkness of that inner chamber, leaving the fiery jaguar to its eternal watch. The brightness of the afternoon sun feels almost aggressive after the gloom, and you find yourself back in the vast plaza, standing once more before the familiar face of Kukulkan's temple. The pyramid seems different now, knowing what secrets it holds within its stone heart. It feels less like a solid object and more like a place of layers, both physical and historical. But it turns out the secrets aren't all hidden inside. Some are hiding in plain sight, or rather in plain sound. Your guide leads you to a very specific spot on the grass, directly facing the Grand Northern Staircase, the same one the Shadow Serpent descends. He tells you to wait and listen. There's no great ceremony, no hushed reverence like there was for the equinox. He just stands there for a moment, and then, with a motion that seems almost comically simple after all the grandeur, he claps his hands, a single, sharp clap. The sound cuts through the air, crisp and unremarkable. But a split second later, the pyramid answers. What comes back isn't the flat echo of a clap you'd expect from a large wall. It's a high-pitched, chirping sound that seems to slide down the musical scale before it fades. It's a distinct P that sounds unnervingly organic. He claps again. P, The sound is so strange and unexpected you might think a tropical bird in a nearby tree is just messing with you, but it's not. The sound is coming directly from the stone staircase. You've just discovered the pyramid's most bizarre party trick. It can talk like a bird. Specifically, the echo mimics the call of the resplendent quetzal. This was no ordinary bird to the Maya. The quetzal, with its iridescent, meter-long tail feathers and vibrant green plumage, was sacred. It was a messenger from the spirit world, a symbol of goodness and might. Its precious feathers were reserved for the highest nobility and priesthood. To kill a quetzal was a crime of the highest order. So, for the pyramid of the feathered serpent god Kukulkan to be able to speak with the voice of the sacred quetzal bird would have been profoundly magical to the Maya. It was proof of the temple's divine connection. Scientists and historians are still locked in a debate over whether this was a stroke of acoustic genius or a truly magical coincidence. Acoustic engineers have analyzed the phenomenon and found that the sound waves of the clap hit the high, narrow treads of the staircase, creating a series of rapid-fire echoes. These sound waves bounce back and forth between the steps and the ground, and their combined frequencies create the unique, bird-like chirp. The opposing argument is that the Maya built the stairs that way simply because it was a stable and effective design for a steep incline, and the cool sound effect was just a happy accident. You try to get your smart speaker at home to play the sound of rain, and it starts ordering you 1,000 umbrellas. These guys may have accidentally built a perfect bird call generator. Intentional or not, the effect is undeniable. It makes the pyramid interactive. Imagine a priest standing here, performing a ritual. He claps his hands, and the sacred mountain answers him with the voice of a god's messenger. For the common person standing in the plaza, it would be an electrifying experience, a direct conversation between man and monument. You clap your own hands, and there it is again, P. The pyramid is not just a passive stage for rituals, it's an active participant. It listens and it responds, blurring the line between a pile of expertly stacked rocks and a living, breathing entity. The faint, chirping echo of the quetzal fades behind you as your guide leads you away from the grand plaza and the pyramid. You follow a wide raised causeway, a sack-board white road that feels ancient under your feet. These limestone paved highways connected the most important ceremonial parts of the city. This particular one leads you away from the towering man-made mountain and into a denser patch of jungle. The air grows cooler, damper. You notice the ground here is different, less a solid shelf and more a pockmarked Swiss cheese landscape of crumbling limestone. This geology is the secret to everything. It's why a civilization of this size could thrive in a place with almost no surface rivers or lakes. The guide stops at the edge of a massive, almost perfectly circular hole in the earth. It's as if a giant cookie cutter punched through the jungle floor. Sheer limestone cliffs drop about 60 feet down to a pool of dark, still water below. This is a cenote. These natural sinkholes are formed when the roof of an underground cave collapses, revealing the subterranean river system that flows like a secret circulatory system beneath the entire peninsula. For the Maya, these were, first and foremost, their lifeline. They were the primary, and often only, source of fresh water. Without these geological wells, there would be no city here, no plaza, no ball court, and certainly no pyramid. But as with everything in the Mayan world, the practical was inseparable from the sacred. A cenote wasn't just a well, it was a mouth, a portal. The Maya believed these watery abysses were the gateways to Xibalba, the underworld. This wasn't a hell in the Christian sense, but a dark, terrifying, watery realm that the sun had to journey through each night before it could be reborn at dawn. It was the home of fearsome gods of death and disease. The cenote was the physical doorway between the world of the living and this powerful, dangerous other world. Many cities were founded around them, Their pyramids deliberately built in proximity, creating a powerful axis. The pyramid reached up to the heavens. The cenote reached down to the underworld. The city of mortals lived right in between. This particular cenote, the sacred cenote of Chichen Itza, was not used for drinking water. It was used for offerings. For centuries, local legends told of a well of sacrifice where young maidens were thrown to appease the rain god, Chak. For a long time, outsiders dismissed these as lurid tales. Then, in the early 1900s, an American diplomat and amateur archaeologist named Edward Thompson bought the land and began dredging the cenote. What he pulled from the murky depths was astonishing. He found gold discs, jade plaques, obsidian blades, incense, pottery, and even preserved wooden objects. And he found human remains. Skeletons of men, women, and children, challenging the old maiden's only story. This haul sparked a debate that historians still argue over today. Were these people victims of sacrifice in the way we typically think of it, offerings to please a hungry god during a drought? Or were they something else? Some scholars propose that the people and precious objects sent into the cenote were considered messengers to the supernatural world. It wasn't so much a payment as it was a high-stakes delivery service to the ancestors or gods dwelling in Xibalba. Peering over the edge, you watch a vine sway gently over the dark green water. The silence here is different from the plazas. It's a heavy, deep silence, thick with the weight of water and the gravity of all that was given to it. It's the other side of the coin to the pyramid's skyward ambition, a gateway to the dark, watery beginning and end of all things. You turn your back on the deep, quiet pull of the cenote and follow the white road back toward the city's heart. The pyramid of Kukulkan is now just one peak in a range of stone mountains. Your guide leads you toward a different kind of structure. It isn't as tall or as grandly simple as the Great Pyramid, but what it lacks in height, it makes up for in an almost manic level of surface detail. As you get closer, you realize the walls are not flat. They are writhing with carvings. The entire facade of the building is a mosaic of intricate stone latticework, geometric patterns, and something else, something far more unsettling. Faces, hundreds of them, staring out from the stone. They are stacked in columns, arranged in patterns, peeking from every corner. They aren't realistic human portraits, but stylized supernatural masks. Most common is a face with huge round eyes, a toothless mouth, and a long, bizarrely hooked nose that curls down like an elephant's trunk. This is the unmistakable face of Chak, the powerful and deeply respected god of rain, thunder, and lightning. In a land with no rivers, where survival depended entirely on rain, filling the cenotes and watering the maize fields, keeping Chak happy wasn't just a good idea, it was everything. Plastering his face all over a temple wasn't just decoration. It was a desperate 24/7 prayer carved in stone. But it's the doorways that truly stop you in your tracks. They aren't simple rectangles cut into the wall. You are looking at the entrance to a small temple, and the doorway is a mouth. A gigantic, open monster mouth. The threshold is a row of massive carved stone teeth. The lintel above is a monstrous upper jaw and snout, and the sides of the entrance are framed by the beast's gaping maw. To enter this sacred space, you have no choice but to be swallowed. You have to walk directly into the jaws of a god or a celestial monster. It's the ultimate no trespassing sign, written in a language of nightmares and divine power. This architectural feature, known as a zoomorphic portal, was a powerful tool for creating a psychological barrier. It made the act of entering a building a profound, transformative experience. You weren't just going inside. You were passing through a cosmic threshold, leaving the mundane world behind and entering a supernatural realm. Imagine being a young Maya acolyte approaching this doorway for the first time. The message is clear. You are small, you are vulnerable, and you are about to be consumed by something far greater than yourself. Historians still argue about what exactly these monster mouths are meant to represent. Are they the symbolic mouths of caves, which, like cenotes, were seen as portals to the underworld, Shiboba? Or are they the mouth of a great sky monster, perhaps the creator deity Itzamna, depicted as a celestial crocodile? The ambiguity might be the point. It's a gateway to the other, a place of power that mortals can only enter by being symbolically devoured first. As for the stucco that would have covered all this, the quirky tidbit is the sheer industry required to make it. To produce the lime plaster, you have to burn limestone in kilns at incredibly high temperatures for days. This required a constant supply of firewood. It's been estimated that producing the plaster to cover just one large pyramid would have required the clear-cutting of hundreds of acres of jungle. The Maya were literally sacrificing the forest to create the smooth, painted skin for their stone gods. Standing here, looking at the stone fangs of the doorway, you feel the immense power these facades were meant to project, a power built from faith, fear, and fire. You run your hand over the rough, carved stone of the monster mouth, the porous limestone cool and gritty against your fingertips. You think of the sheer, mind-numbing effort it took, not just the artistry of the final carving, but the entire supply chain of faith and sweat that brought this single, heavy block from a quarry deep in the jungle to this exact spot. Who were the hands that accomplished this? Who were the minds that planned it? Standing here, it's impossible not to wonder about the people who built these stairways to the stars. The common image is of thousands of slaves being whipped into submission, but the reality was likely more complex. The workforce was probably made up of the common people, farmers, artisans, villagers, who owed the city and its divine ruler, the Ahau, a tax. But this tax wasn't paid in money, it was paid in labor. During the agricultural off-seasons, when the maize fields didn't need tending, great portions of the population would be mobilized for these massive public works projects. It was their civic duty, their contribution to the cosmic order. Now, picture the work itself. They had no metal tools, no iron chisels, no steel saws. To quarry the millions of limestone blocks, they used harder stones like chert and flint, slowly and painstakingly chipping away at the bedrock. They used wooden levers and sheer muscle to pry the massive blocks free. They had no beasts of burden, no oxen, no horses. To move a multi-ton block from the quarry to the city, they placed it on log rollers and dragged it with ropes, a sweltering, back-breaking procession of human power. And they had no cranes or pulleys to lift the blocks into place. They built enormous earthen ramps, dragging the stones up to their designated level, then raising the ramp for the next tier. Historians still argue whether this labor was a willing act of community devotion, a kind of sacred barn raising on a citywide scale, or a form of coerced taxation enforced by a powerful elite. Was it a joyful obligation, a chance to contribute to the glory of the gods and your king? Or was it a dreaded, dangerous duty that you fulfilled out of fear of punishment? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, a complex mix of faith and force. And who drew up the plans? There were no blueprints, no CAD software. The architects were a highly educated class, likely priests or nobles who possessed a sacred knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. They understood the cosmic alignments and the structural stresses. Their tools were shockingly simple: stretched ropes for creating straight lines, wooden right angles, and perhaps basic plumb bobs for ensuring verticality. Their plans were likely held in their minds, a set of sacred ratios and cosmological rules passed down through generations. To achieve the perfect serpent of light on the equinox with what was essentially just some string and a good eye is nothing short of miraculous. It's like building a Swiss watch with a hammer and a rock. At the very top of this human pyramid was the Ahau, the divine king. He wasn't just a ruler who commissioned a fancy building. He was seen as a living conduit to the gods. The pyramid was a monument to his personal power and lineage, a cosmic engine he was building to help him mediate between the earthly and supernatural realms. His rituals would have sanctified the construction site. His vision was the driving force. He was the one who gave the order, who marshaled the people, the architects, and the resources of the entire kingdom to raise a mountain flat earth, a testament to a collective will, wielded by a single divine hand. The vision of the bustling construction site, the sweat, the chanting, the chipping of stone fades from your mind, replaced by the profound quiet of the present moment. You step out from the shadow of the temple with its monster mouth door and into the full, immense emptiness of a central plaza. The sun beats down on the pale limestone, the heat radiating up in shimmering waves. This open space was designed to hold thousands of people, to be a stage for grand ceremonies, a marketplace of vibrant sounds and smells. Now, the only sound is the gentle rustle of leaves in the ever-present jungle that frames the clearing and the buzz of an insect near your ear. It's an unnerving level of silence. Where did everybody go? This is the great haunting question of the Maya. You are standing in the ruins of a civilization that, in many areas, simply stopped. Around the 9th century ebb died in the southern lowlands where classic cities like Tikal and Calakmul flourished. The Maya world underwent a dramatic transformation. They stopped carving monuments with dates. The grand-scale construction of pyramids and temples ceased. And one by one, the people began to drift away from the urban centers, letting the jungle patiently, inexorably swallow their magnificent creations. This wasn't a single, sudden event, but a slow, rolling decline over a century or more, often called the classic Maya collapse. To this day, historians and archaeologists are locked in one of the biggest debates in their field. What on earth happened? There's no single easy answer, no stone tablet that reads, "Gone to the coast, back in 500 years." The leading theory is that it wasn't one thing, but a perfect storm of calamities. Decades of intensive archaeological and climate science point towards a series of prolonged, severe droughts. Remember Chak, the rain god whose face was plastered everywhere? He seems to have fallen silent, and without rain, the reservoirs dried up and the maize crops failed, leading to widespread famine and malnutrition. But that's not the whole story. The city-states were also engaged in almost constant, increasingly brutal warfare with each other, vying for resources and regional dominance. This endemic conflict would have strained the food supply, disrupted trade routes, and led to a breakdown in political order. Add to that the environmental cost of their own success. Remember all that forest being clear-cut to make stucco for these very pyramids? That deforestation would have worsened the effects of the drought. Some theories also propose outbreaks of deadly disease spreading through the dense urban populations, or even a kind of peasant revolution, a society-wide rejection of the divine kings who had clearly failed to keep the rains coming and the cosmos in balance. It's like trying to figure out if a company went bankrupt due to a bad CEO, a market crash, or a faulty product. The answer is probably all of the above. A quirky and poignant piece of evidence from some sites are buildings that were left half-finished. You can almost see the scene. A stone carver places his church chisel down at the end of the day, fully expecting to pick it up again tomorrow, but he never returns. At other sites, archaeologists have found evidence of what they call termination rituals, where the Maya seem to have ceremonially killed or desecrated their own sacred spaces and objects before abandoning them, as if to formally break the contract between them and the city's gods. Standing in this empty plaza, surrounded by these silent stone giants, you feel the weight of that mystery. This wasn't just an abandoned construction site. It was the end of a world. For centuries after the last inhabitants walked away, the pyramids slept. The plazas fell silent, the great stone mountains held their breath, and the jungle, which had always been waiting patiently at the edges, began its slow and steady reclamation. A thick green blanket of vines and strangler figs covered the monster-mouthed doorways. Tree roots, powerful as pythons, forced their way between the massive blocks of the stairways. The brilliant red stucco, battered by centuries of rain and sun, flaked away, returning to the soil as dust. To the outside world, the Maya civilization was less than a memory. It was mostly just a name, tangled up with wild legends of a lost jungle empire. Then you step into a new timeline. It's the 1830s. The air is still thick with humidity. The insects are still merciless, but now you wear heavy canvas trousers and tall leather boots. You are with two men who would change everything: an American lawyer and diplomat named John Lloyd Stephens, and a British architect and artist named Frederick Catherwood. Stephens was the writer, the adventurous spirit with a knack for diplomacy. Catherwood was the quiet, methodical genius, a man with an architect's eye and an artist's hand, renowned for his incredibly precise drawings. They had heard the scattered rumors of strange stone cities swallowed by the jungles of Central America, and they set out to find them. There were no tour buses, no handy guidebooks, no TripAdvisor reviews to warn them about the mosquitoes or the political instability. Their journey was a brutal affair, hacking their way through dense, uncharted territory with machetes, battling disease, and negotiating with suspicious local officials. Imagine swinging a blade for hours, drenched in sweat, only to advance a few hundred feet. And then, one day, through a final curtain of thick leaves, you see it, just as you did earlier. But this time, it's not in a neat, cleared plaza, it's a ghost. A stone head covered in moss, the corner of a building, a section of a steep stairway, all of it tangled in a chaotic embrace with the jungle. This is where Catherwood's genius came into play. He brought with him a device called a camera lucida, an optical instrument that used a prism to superimpose the image of the subject onto his drawing paper. This allowed him to trace the outlines with near photographic accuracy. He would sit for hours in the sweltering heat, swatting away insects, meticulously capturing every intricate detail of the glyphs and carvings before they could be lost forever. It was painstakingly slow, heroic work. The quirky part of their story sounds like a joke. At one point, to secure his right to explore and draw the ruins of the city of Copan in Honduras, John Lloyd Stephens literally bought the entire ancient city from its local landowner for the grand sum of $50 American. He became the temporary owner of a lost world. Historians still debate the legacy of these early explorers. Were they noble scientific pioneers, driven by a pure desire for knowledge and a romantic sense of adventure, intent on bringing a forgotten civilization to light? Or were they agents of a colonial mindset, viewing these sacred sites as exotic commodities to be documented and, in some cases, plundered for foreign museums? The truth, as always, is murky. But what is certain is that when they returned, their 2-volume book, Incidents of Travel in Central America, Chiapas, and Yucatan, filled with Stephens's gripping narrative and Catherwood's stunningly accurate illustrations, became an international bestseller. For the first time, the world saw the majesty of the Mayan pyramids. The stones were finally breaking their long silence. The story of Stephens and Catherwood put the pyramids on the world map, transforming them from lost ruins into global icons and tourist destinations. But as you turn your back on the main plaza, letting the sounds of tour groups and clapping tourists fade behind you, you start to notice the other side of that legacy. You follow your guide, who navigates the crowds with a familiar ease down a less traveled path. He's not just a guide who has learned a script. The way he points out a particular carving or the shape of a collapsed mound suggests a deeper, more personal connection. He leads you to the edge of the cleared archaeological zone, where the manicured lawns give way to the wilder, unrestored jungle. Here, half swallowed by vegetation, are dozens of other structures, lumpy hills that are really unexcavated temples. the faint outlines of causeways, the scattered stones of ancient family homes. This is where you meet the true guardians of the pyramids. They aren't ghosts or spirits, but people. The Mayan never vanished. Their great political system of divine kings collapsed in the south, and their cities were abandoned, but the people themselves endured. They adapted, they changed, and their descendants are still here. In fact, millions of people who identify as Maya live today in the same regions their ancestors did, speaking dozens of distinct Mayan languages. Your guide stops and tells you his grandmother's house is just a few miles away, in a village where most people still speak Yucatec Maya as their first language. He explains that the glyphs Catherwood so painstakingly drew, which were once an indecipherable puzzle, can now be largely read, and they reveal a language that is the direct ancestor of the words he speaks every day. The pyramids are not a foreign culture to him. They are his inheritance. Before you step onto a small trail leading to a hidden spring, your guide does something subtle. He touches a small, weathered stone, murmuring a few quiet words in Maya. You ask him what he said. He smiles and explains that it's polite to ask permission from the old ones, the Yambalam, the Jaguar Lords, or Guardians of the Forest. Before you enter their space, this is a perfect living example of syncretism. While many Maya today are Catholic, the old beliefs haven't disappeared, they've blended. The Christian God exists alongside a vibrant world of forest spirits, sacred hills, and ancient gods whose power still lingers in these stones. It's a quirky and beautiful tidbit. The guardians of these pyramids are not just the modern people, but the unseen spirits they still honor. This brings you to complex and ongoing scholarly debate about the modern Maya relationship with their monumental heritage. As you walk back toward the entrance, you see rows of vendors, many of them local Maya people, selling intricate textiles, carved obsidian, and miniature versions of the very pyramid you just explored. Is this bustling commerce a sign of cultural empowerment, a way for the descendants to reclaim their history and make a living from the intense interest it generates? Or is it a form of economic subjugation, where the sacred symbols of a lost golden age are reduced to trinkets for tourists? A constant reminder of a world that has been commercialized by others. The $50 Stevens paid for a city seems like both a historical bargain and a grim precedent. The answer is not simple, and it's a conversation that echoes throughout the villages that dot this ancient landscape. The pyramids, for their living guardians, are both a profound source of identity and a very complicated inheritance. The day's heat finally surrenders to the cool of the evening. The last vendor packs up their wares, the gates of the archaeological site are closed, and a deep, ancient quiet settles back over the plazas. You find yourself standing alone on the grass as the sky bruises from orange to a deep indigo, and the first impossibly bright stars begin to appear. Above you, the silhouette of the Great Pyramid cuts a perfect geometric shape against the heavens. After everything you've seen, the Serpent of Light, the nesting doll temples, the jaguar throne, the acoustic tricks, you realize that for every secret the pyramids have given up, they hold 1,000 more. For a long time, the civilization itself was one of the biggest secrets. But in the latter half of the 20th century, linguists and epigraphers finally cracked the code of the Mayan hieroglyphs. Suddenly, the stone stele and temple walls began to speak, telling us the names of kings, the dates of battles, the lineages of royal families. It was a monumental breakthrough. The silent stones told us who built this pyramid and when, but they don't fully explain why. They give us the grammar of their world, but not the full poetry. This has left historians to debate the fundamental nature of the Maya worldview. Are we right to separate their pyramids into categories like religious, astronomical, or political? Or are we imposing our own modern, compartmentalized way of thinking onto a culture that saw no difference between them? Perhaps for the Maya, astronomy was religion, politics was ceremony, and the pyramid was not a multi-purpose building, but a single, unified expression of a reality where those things were never separate to begin with. The greatest unanswered question may be whether we can ever truly understand their world through the lens of our own. The more you reflect, the more you realize these pyramids weren't just buildings. They were machines designed to manipulate human consciousness. This is a quirky, slightly fringe idea, but a compelling one. They were sensory engines. The architecture was engineered to make you feel small and humbled. The steepness of the stairs was designed to physically force you into a posture of reverence. The monster-mouth doorways were built to evoke primal fear and awe before you entered a sacred space. The light shows were timed to create a moment of collective, public ecstasy. The acoustic tricks were designed to make you believe the very stones were alive and communicating with the gods. It was a complete sensory toolkit for creating a spiritual experience. Tonight, under the vast and stardusted sky, the pyramid is once again a pure silhouette, its intricate details dissolving into shadow. Its secrets are safe. We still don't know every reason for the Great Collapse. We can only guess at the precise thoughts of the player in the ball court, waiting for victory or sacrifice. We will never know the full story of every person who dragged these stones through the jungle, or every ruler whose spirit was meant to sit on that hidden jaguar throne. The pyramid doesn't offer up these truths easily. It stands in the darkness as it has for 1,000 years, a silent mountain of questions, whispering its remaining secrets only to the night wind and the patient listening stars. And as you stand there in the deep quiet of the Yucatan night, the sharp silhouette of the pyramid begins to soften, its stone edges blurring just a little against the vast, dark canvas of the sky. The distant sounds of the jungle, the cries of the night birds, and the hum of the cicadas all start to fade, melting into a single, gentle, and continuous sound, not unlike the soft, steady hum of the fan in your room. The weight of all those unanswered questions, the mysteries of the kings and the cosmos, ceases to be a challenge for the mind, and instead becomes a quiet, drifting sensation, like clouds passing before a distant moon. There is no need to solve these puzzles tonight. The stones will keep their secrets, and they will be there tomorrow and the night after that, waiting patiently as they have always done. And you can let go now, allowing the darkness behind your eyes to become as deep and as peaceful as the ancient night itself. Let the journey of the day dissolve into the gentle currents of your own breathing, feeling the slow, easy rhythm of rest take over, carrying you softly, quietly, into the deep and welcoming stillness of your own sleep.